Now we are going to move to the presentation of Dr. David Ness. Dr. David Ness, we are so pleased to have you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je parle un petit peu français, un petit peu. Et je suis en Australie du Sud. But thank you very much for your kind invitation, Professor Krim and you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
So could I share my slides, please?
Yes, please. Dr. Ness, would you mind introducing yourself? So you are a adjunct professor in the University of South Australia, and you have developed a conceptual model in circular economy, right? And would you mind adding anything else besides this?
Yes, I developed a conceptual model, but more recently was with the World Resources Forum for the relationship of countries in a circular economy, because you have export countries, maybe like Algeria, who export petroleum and so forth to Europe. So my colleague and I developed a model for that. I won't spend much time on that, but my background, yes, circular economy, I've been involved for many years, and I know the founder of the circular economy, Professor Walter Starhill from Switzerland, quite well. And also I've done some projects for the UN on green business and things like that, and clean environment. So yeah, that's enough of my background. But could I share my slide, please?
Go ahead.
So what's the time? Yes. So although I haven't visited Algeria, although I'd very much like to, I will seek to show how integrating the circular economy with the Sustainable Development Goals, including climate action, may assist your country address its challenges. As I understand, these include increasing desertification, declining agricultural yields, decreasing water resources, and as I understand, there's a big youth population and unemployment, and of course entrepreneurship can help them. The circular economy is often seen as a panacea for overcoming many problems, but it is primarily about recirculating resources, and it needs to be seen within a wider perspective to be sustainable. Therefore, the main theme of my talk is how joined up approaches may be more effective and, in circular economy terms, add more value than those tackling single issues in isolation. I will also seek to apply this thinking to some regions, or I think they're called wilayas, within Algeria. And although I've tried to do some homework about Algeria, I hope you'll forgive me for any inaccuracies. My main intention is to demonstrate the effectiveness of this approach, and how social livelihoods may be improved while protecting and conserving the environment. Some reflections on the circular economy. As the diagram shows, the circular economy aims to recirculate bio-resources on the left and physical resources on the right in closed loops, thus gaining more value from them. And although not shown, wealthier societies, including many in Europe and certainly Australia, where I'm from, must drastically reduce consumption. And This diagram, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, does not include reduce, which I think is an omission. But lower and middle income societies, and I think Algeria is one of those, need to expand their services, shelter and infrastructure, which may actually involve a bit more consumption. A circular economy within Europe may lead to it becoming more insular and importing less raw materials from countries such as Algeria. This may exacerbate an already unequal relationship between trading partners, as I discussed recently at the World Resources Forum. I won't have time to go into this, but there's a link there you may want to discuss later. Pressures to phase down fossil fuels may also impact on Algeria, requiring cleaner development and more economic diversification, which requires support and investment from Europe and elsewhere. So the circular economy must be adapted to context and wider social, economic, environmental and political constraints. This brings us to systems theory. I've written some papers about this in the past, and I think it can provide a very useful way forward. Application of systems theory can help find symbiosis between sectors, and a system has a number of aspects. It has a purpose, it has a number of different elements, connections between those elements, and it has a boundary, and also it has a purpose. The diagram on the right, I don't have time to go into it in detail, but it illustrates symbiosis between transport, water, energy and housing within an urban infrastructure corridor. And I developed this approach actually in 2008, and I later applied it in work for the UN. Yeah, so it's actually included in a UN publication, so linking up the different elements. So yeah, linking up the sectors and finding symbiosis. The important point is we can achieve more outputs with less resource inputs. Now, turning to Algeria and some pilot studies, an author from Algeria, Sarnaouni et al. 2013 and others highlight that Algeria is highly vulnerable to climate change, as you would know, including desertification, arid lands, vegetation clearance, erosion, as well as water shortages and water quality, and also air, water, marine pollution and waste management issues. So there's a lot of issues there. And as part of its nationally determined contribution to tackling climate change, Algeria intends to develop a national adaptation plan and to reduce emissions by 22% by 2030. I learned that the forestry and energy sectors were identified as pilot sectors for improved climate governance, focused on 3 pilot wilayas or regions, namely Djelfa, sorry about my pronunciation, in the central north, and Guelma in the coastal area. I understand it's a rich and fertile coastal area. And on the other hand, down in the far south, Tamanrasset, which I read it's hot, high and dry, and it's in the desert region. So I suggest that addressing the other climate challenges I have just mentioned and the SDGs could also focus on those three regions. That's just my suggestion. But next I'll illustrate how an integrated systems approach may address the SDGs in a linked up way, delivering more community benefits, entrepreneurship and jobs, while safeguarding and adapting to the environment. And because of time limitations, I will just focus on Telfer in the central north in illustrating how the approach may be applied. As I understand, Telfer is well located at a transport junction and point of transition between the dry, steppe-like high plateaus of the north and the Sahara south. As the picture there shows, I can see that it's got forest, and in the distance it's got, you know, merging into desert. I also understand there is widespread loss of vegetation cover, and that's one of the major causes of desertification. But the rangelands are used for sheep farming and play a fundamental role in the agricultural economy. And Telfer has an important livestock market, I reckon. So what I want to show is how circularity and synergies can be found by a linked up system approach addressing the SDGs, which you can see there, and you would well know though. Firstly, the last SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, and Sustainable Communities, number 11. So it's all about partnerships and working together. Secondly, reducing vegetation clearance. Revegetation and reforestation can be linked with water availability and harvesting, restriction of livestock from at-risk landscapes, with reduced heat, because the more trees there are, then there's less heat. So that addresses SDG 15, life on land, and 13, climate action. The next point, organic waste from agriculture, farming, and from housing and urban areas can provide compost for soil, biogas, and nutrients for plant cultivation and crops, which SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, and with crops and food, it's SDG 2, zero hunger. And then rainwater harvesting from water-sensitive urban design can be directed to wetlands and grassland and reduce runoff and erosion by biofiltering, which can lead to clean water, SDG 6. And then moving on, carbon credits and forestry property rights via land restoration and plantations can aid forest conservation and also economic growth and jobs. And I just want to mention briefly about forest property rights. A team of researchers from my university went to China and collaborated with China in the rural areas and actually applied this linked up approach. And we also explored entrepreneurship. We have it all written in a book. But one interesting thing was forest property rights. China has a mechanism to allocate forest property rights to communities and farmers, which it helps them move towards cutting down trees to conserving trees, and that kind of thing. And then we move on to a shift to renewables is obviously necessary, which is SDG 11, climate action and affordable and clean energy, SDG 7. And finally, in the Jelfa area and others, I understand that Algeria has rich heritage and landscapes, and there could be scope, probably there already is, for eco and heritage tourism, job creation, again, social enterprises and entrepreneurship. SDG 8, economic growth, and 10, reduced inequalities, and even going into gender equality, SDG 5. So some takeaway messages. Holistic and integrated approaches to the SDGs based upon systems theory can overcome limitations of the circular economy. As I said, by itself, it can't fully address all the sustainable development goals and sustainable development. Finding linkages can enable more societal value to be gained from less resources and environmental degradation, while creating green entrepreneurship opportunities. So, yeah, thank you very much. And just in my slide, I've provided some references to some of the readings I consulted, and also some of my own research and others. But I think I'll leave it there. And yeah, thank you again very much for inviting me to take part. I really respect the people of Algeria, and I hope I'll be very willing to help more and try to involve my colleagues too. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Ness, for joining us, and we do share the same value and respect for you. And I think we have time for only one question in order for Professor Halish to start on time. Thank you for your valuable insights, and please, if there is any question, we have Ms. Latifa who would like to ask a question. Go ahead, please. Mr.
Bonjour à tous, good morning. I'm sorry in advance I'm not able to ask my question in English because I lost my fluency. So sorry, Mr. David. So I'm gonna ask my question in in French.
Okay, I'm gonna to translate.
Thank you, Sabrina.
You're welcome.
Pour parler de l'économie circulaire justement, ou de tous les objectifs du développement durable, comment Monsieur David pourrait nous éclairer un peu plus sur les pays qui sont, on va dire, les pays sous-développés, les pays aussi arabes, parce qu'il faut savoir que ce sont des pays qui sont riches, qui ont beaucoup de ressources naturelles, mais toutefois, il est très difficile d'instaurer ce genre de politique du moment qu'il y a une mauvaise gouvernance, comme l'avait signalé tout à l'heure M. Derouni, que je rejoins votre opinion là-dessus, et aussi celle de Madame Halish, hein, parce qu'elle le souligne correctement. Aujourd'hui, la politique et la gouvernance algérienne, je donne l'exemple de l'Algérie parce que nous y sommes, c'est quand même un pays qui ne présente pas en fait une gouvernance qui soit adéquate aujourd'hui pour répondre à ces objectifs du développement durable. Il y a beaucoup de définitions par des professeurs, par des penseurs, etc., qui ont clairement expliqué que pour éradiquer, par exemple, je donnerai l'exemple de la pauvreté, qui est l'éradication de la pauvreté est l'un des objectifs du développement durable, eh bien, il faudrait que l'environnement soit adéquat. Et pour que l'environnement soit adéquat, il faudrait aussi que la gouvernance soit correcte.
Thank you, Ms. Latifa. I think that I have sensed your question, and I am going to address it right now to Dr. Ness. If you
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. If you can just address it in less than 1 minute in order for Professor Halish to start her presentation, since she has a lecture to give to students. So based on Ms. Latifa's point of view, she sees Algeria like a country which is rich in resources, but despite of this, we have a lot of things to improve in order like to use the economy, the circular economy effectively. So how can we do this?
Well, the resources, yes, sure, it's rich in resources, and I understand, you know, petroleum, and I think it has, you know, certain food resources and other resources. I think, as I mentioned, I think with the pressure for climate change and on fossil fuels, some of the exports may be affected. So I think it would be good if Algeria could diversify. I understand, you know, petroleum and gas and those things are, you know, very high income earners. If it could be diversified and into some possibly new areas, you know, and ecotourism I mentioned, and you know, dry land farming and all those kind of things.
Yes.
So I think it's mainly about diversification, and the circular economy can be applied to each of those and involve entrepreneurs. I was trying to show that.
Yes.
I hope that answers very quickly. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. David Ness. So you have answered it in a time record, and we are appreciative. Thanks once again for joining us. And I think that Mr. Sadouni raised his hand. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to address your question, but I'm going to ask the permission of Dr. Ness to share your email with him so he can email you his question, and everyone is going to be happy.
Yes, certainly.
Does it work?
Please,
Thank
please
you,
do.
Dr. Ness.